I'm happiest in the saddle.
A fellow sportsman.
I am an FBI agent!
Great Scott!
What do you say we cut the chit-chat? A-hole!
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria!
Come with me if you want to live.
Hello, and welcome to Retro Ramble. I'm Charlie McGhee.
I'm George McGhee.
And this time, dear Ramblers, we are going back to 1989, back in the 80s, almost the 90s, to celebrate, enjoy, and revisit one of George and I's favorite films from growing up. It is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, given to us by
none other than Mr. Steven Spielberg, and obviously produced by Mr. George Lucas.
I was going to say, like Raiders, I would expect there to be some Lucas-y fingerprints all over this. So Harrison Ford, back in what everyone hoped, and probably still does today, was his last outing as Indiana Jones. We go to some crazy places, we go to some familiar places, but to take things up a notch, we've got the actors that made the original Raiders of the Lost Ark what it was. And I think there's a certain somebody who has been added. We have none other than Sean Connery.
Not on the podcast, but in spirit.
Oh, always. But what a time this was for him. So am I right in thinking, is this hot off the tails of, or was this just preceding his supporting?
No, this is so I think The Untouchables was 87. So yeah, this is a good. He's had a couple of years, hot off the heels of his. But he's still credited as Sean Connery, not Sir Sean.
But yeah, I think, as I mentioned when we covered, George and I did a live show when we did Raiders of the Lost Ark. So look up for that on the internet if you can find it.
But we've also done it as a regular podcast as well.
We've done it twice.
Good, we did it twice.
But yeah, I mean, I think that would be a difficult one. If you put me in a room with a gun with 2 bullets, I'd probably shoot myself to try and decide which is better between Empire Strikes Back and Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's a very tough decision to make, but we covered it twice, and I think I said at the time that even though Raiders of the Lost Ark is the best Indiana Jones, I've still got a lot of time for The Last Crusade. I think it's almost I think I went on to say it's my favorite, simply because it has Sean Connery in it. That tips the balance for me.
Yes, I think I was going to say the exact same thing, and it's probably because you said it to me previous. Is like, whilst Raiders of the Lost Ark is
technically,
arguably one of the best action films ever made, action adventure, whatever you want to call it, and the best Indiana Jones film, this is my favorite.
I think the latest installment. So should we take a moment just before we jump into this film, George? Obviously, there is another, yes, ladies and gentlemen, another Indiana Jones film out at the cinema. This is the 5th one.
Yes, depending on your thoughts on Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So yes, we are being completely shameless. We're tapping into the zeitgeist. Yes, there's a new Indiana Jones film. It'll probably be out by the time you listen to this podcast.
Tapping into the zeitgeist or giving somebody something nicer to remember. Take your pick.
Yes, that's true. And yes, whilst we have already covered Raiders of the Lost Ark, you think it would be logical to move on to the next film, which is Temple of Doom, which is a prequel. However, when Charlie and I were chatting through this, we thought it was fitting, as this is intended and being hyped as Indiana Jones' last adventure, the Dial of Destiny, and he's back to fighting Nazis. It would only be right to go and cover Last Crusade.
I also think somehow that guy from Short Round from Temple of Doom, who's in Everything Everywhere All at Once, I feel like he's got another film in his back pocket. I think he's going to have something good that we're all going to go and see in the next few years, and then we can do Temple of Doom. Anyway, we're backtracking. We digress. So this time, ladies and gentlemen, it's 1989. It's Steven Spielberg. It's what Retro Ramble's all about. George, is there anything else we need to say before we launch into this?
Quickly, before I roll the trailer, just a usual disclaimer. If this is your first Retro Ramble listen, so Charlie and I, we are brothers, and the whole purpose of this podcast is for Charlie and I to go back and rediscover the films that we grew up with, and looking at what made them so great. Do they still hold up? Have they been remade, spun off into a new Netflix series, or what have you? So it's an affectionate, light-hearted look back at the films of our youth. So there'll be trivia, there'll be us reviewing it. But yeah, it's like an old friend. We sometimes like to have a bit of fun with it. So sit back and enjoy the ride.
Excellent. How are you doing with the trailer? Do you need me to spitball? Do you need me to try?
No. It's all good to go. Finally, without saying, I mean, we're going to go into this film in detail, so there will be spoilers from the very off. But if you haven't seen this film, what have you been doing?
Are you doing with your life?
Yeah.
Really?
So, I think we are good to go. I will share my screen.
Okay, I'm just going to turn down some John Williams music and then turn up some other John Williams music. Release the trailer.
We're about to complete a great quest. The Holy Grail, Dr. Jones.
Oh, rats.
This is it. Look, the shield is the second marker. We found it.
Indiana Jones is on the quest of a lifetime. But for some adventures, one Jones is not enough.
Dad? Junior?
Don't call me that, please.
Follow me! I know the way!
A race across 3 continents.
And in this sort of race, there's no silver medal for finishing second.
Hang on, Dad, we're going in!
Into the homeland of the enemy.
Nazis. I hate these guys.
Our situation has not improved.
In his search for the Holy Grail.
How dare you kiss me?
Are you crazy? Don't go between them!
Go between them, are you crazy?
Where's my father?
In the belly of that steel beast. Dad! Junior!
You call this archaeology? The quest for the Grail is not archaeology. It's a race against evil.
Germany has declared war on the Jones boys.
Those people are trying to kill us.
I know, Dad!
It's a new experience for me. Happens to me all the time.
Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Have the adventure of your life, keeping up with the Joneses.
So, George, 1989. This is summer of 1989.
What a summer!
When I say those numbers, all I think of is Batman. Was it summer? Was it Christmas? Was it summer for the US and Christmas for us? Remind me.
No, it was all summer. So Batman all roads lead back to Batman. Batman was, I think, released in the States in like April, May, probably May. And I don't think we got it until July. So there was a few months between, and I think,
but it was a summer blockbuster.
So across this summer, it doesn't matter whether it was UK or US. So yes, there was Batman, Last Crusade, Lethal Weapon 2, Ghostbusters 2, Back to the Future 2, Look Who's Talking, and one of the greatest films ever made, Tango and Cash.
What a time to be alive. Imagine being 10 or 11 years old. I can't. Oh, no. Wait a minute. Yes, I can. I can imagine. But full credit where it's due to all of those people who didn't like the turn we took on Tango and Cash. I didn't see it when it came out of the cinema.
Speaking of this, I'm just jumping into first memories. So this is one of my first fond memories of the cinema. Obviously, previously we've talked about me seeing such cinematic classics. Some of my first cinema outings were the double whammy, the canon double whammy of Superman 4 and Masters of the Universe. However, I remember, going to the UCI in the Metro Centre to see this. But the one reason I remember it is because I remember it's the first time I saw the trailer for Batman. And so I would have been, 5 at the time. And I remember just being really confused at the Batman trailer. I was like, okay, so you've got Batman, you've got the Joker, and who's this creepy other guy? Oh, no, that's Michael Keaton.
And also, why am I seeing the end of the film before I've seen the film itself? That was the age you were at. You were like, what's a trailer? What's a trailer?
It was really confusing. It was like, what's it between these three guys? I didn't get the whole Bruce Wayne thing. I was just like, who's this?
Still don't trust Michael Keaton.
Who's the creepy guy with the weird eyebrows? Oh, that's Michael Keaton. So yes, that is my one memory, ironically, of this film is of another film. But I remember enjoying it lots. I remember, as every Indiana Jones film, I remember being a little bit scared. But that may be the reason why, as we were talking about before the trailer, this is probably my favorite sort of go-to comfort movie of the Indiana Jones saga.
I think, just to quickly touch on first memories, you're talking about a golden age for us. It was the Metro Centre. It was the best of times. It had just opened. It was recently opened.
I was going to say, it was probably not long after it opened.
Yeah, and the UCI was all fresh and new. It hadn't really been bought.
Didn't smell of vomit or spilt Coke.
It hadn't crashed and burned and taken over and replaced by somebody else and then somebody else and then somebody else. It was all new. And the whole concept that we could go to the mall like we'd seen in the films from many years previous and actually go and see a film was very new to us. And it was a rite of passage. It was like 13, 14, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. Can we get into the 12? We can't get into the 50. That would come later in life. But yeah, this was that era. It was that, this was actually pre-12 films. This was, Pete, go with your parents or don't go at all. You won't get in.
Well, yeah, this was the summer that the 12 certificate in the UK was introduced. It was introduced for Batman, I think. Ironically, the PG-13 was introduced in America for the release, the double whammy of Temple of Doom and Gremlins. So
probably a wise choice. I remember 12s being, there was something like, there was the Eric the Viking. I think somebody got stabbed. That was a 12. There was a few films that came out that tried to ride the wave of the 12, but enough about those. This was just as George and I look back to the age of DVD when that came out, this was a golden age of cinema. We were going to the cinema. We were 11, 12, we were in our young ages going there. It was a weekend thing. It was our life. And to go and see a film like this was amazing. It's like, it's Sean Connery. You know him. He's at the end of the Robin Hood film. No, obviously, George and I had.
That was still to come.
I'm getting my years mixed up. George and I had grown up with this guy. And so I think that's what lives on is that you've got two of your biggest heroes together in a film backed up by the likes of Denham Elliott and is it John Rhys Davies? Yeah,
Jonathan Rhys Davies.
And there's the bad guys, So I think what this film is George is obviously, I think we're about to punch a ticket to, we're going to fly a plane on a red line across the map to Production Chat Island. George is going to fill us in on what he can. But I feel like this was a retreading of Spielberg and Lucas saying, yeah, we could do it again. And we could celebrate it. And then we won't touch it ever again. We'll walk away.
Indeed. Well, yes, you've got your ticket. We're as you say, we're on the water plane or what have you. No ticket. So, well, obviously we've covered the origins of the character and the idea back in our Raiders episode. But when they were coming up with the idea, and I think when they sold it in to Paramount, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, there's conflicting reports. I've read reports saying they always intended it to be a trilogy. And I've also read that there was always plans to make it a 5-part film back in 1980. we will eventually cover Temple of Doom at some point, as we've said. But
I'm happy to do that as either a standalone or as a sequel, some sort of sequel celebrations where we look at Empire Strikes Back, and maybe Temple of Doom together or something, or a Harrison Ford special, something like that.
We'll get around to it eventually. But yeah, this film is a bit of a course correction to Temple of Doom. So Temple of Doom, as many people will kind of gather, and it's fairly well known, whilst it was successful, it was deemed a lot darker than Raiders. It was quite a dark, scary film. As I just said before, it required a new certificate in the States. And I think Spielberg admitted that both he and Lucas were going through difficult divorces at the time, and that was kind of channeled into their creative output.
And a lot of LSD.
And a lot of LSD. A lot of hookers and blow. No, that's just us just spitballing. However, so I think due to the sort of critical and commercial response, I think it was still, a successful film. But I think it was back to formula. Let's get back to the fun and excitement of Raiders. However, Spielberg, as we know, in the 80s was a very busy man. Whilst he was churning out loads of Oscar-winning films, he was also, as we've all chatted about on plenty of other episodes, producing a lot of films as well. And at this time, it's sort of around the 1987-88 time, he was hard at work on Rain Man. As we know, Rain Man is not a Steven Spielberg film. That's because his old buddy George Lucas called him up and was like, you want to make another Indiana Jones? Remember, you said we'd do 3. So yes, he had to drop his plans on Rain Man quite sort of begrudgingly. And I think he was also doing I don't know if he was doing pre-production, but he was quite far down the line to direct Big as well. So Spielberg, very busy man. And
he just produced Big.
I don't know if he produced it.
I feel like his fingerprints are on it somewhere.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what extent. I'm sure he probably gets some credit on Rain Man. It might be executive production as well. However, so they went. They got the all guns blazing on making Indiana Jones 3. So they had a few ideas firing around, and they went back to some of the ideas they threw around for Temple of Doom. One of them, Charlie, it's a return to one of our oldest features, involves monkeys.
I was going to say monkey magic.
Monkey magic.
Okay.
So there is the Monkey King from Chinese mythology, and that was a rough idea for Temple of Doom, and they went in a different direction. However, they went back to that idea. So there was 2 different ideas. There was the Monkey King idea, and then there was the idea of having it set in this haunted castle in Scotland. So they got Chris Columbus, the writer-director. He'd written Gremlins.
Goonies.
Written Goonies. He would go on to do Home Alone and even Harry Potter. So Chris Columbus wrote a couple of drafts of Indiana Jones and the Monkey King. I'm just going to tell you, I've read a synopsis, a very wacky synopsis of the script. So it features a haunted castle at the start. Then he's off to Africa. Indiana Jones is chased by Nazis. One of them has a mechanical arm that's also a gun, and then later fires electricity. So biomechanical cyborg Nazis. There's pirates, monkey armies, and that sounds like something out of Congo, and peaches that grant eternal life.
Right.
Interestingly, it also features a boat chase and a tank chase. They'd even got as far as location scouting in Africa, then realized it was a terrible idea.
Monkeys?
Because of its negative depiction of African natives, because I think there was like cannibal tribes, and they ultimately said the script was just too wacky and too unrealistic. So they scrapped
That's not what the monkeys thought, though. If you asked any of the chimps that were involved in making the film, they were up for it. They were up for the limelight.
I mean, yeah, Harrison Ford spent 3 months rehearsing with a monkey, but that's beside the point. So yeah, they went back to the drawing board, and Lucas had always wanted to do something about the Holy Grail, but Spielberg was worried it would remind people of Monty Python. He was just like, yeah, anytime someone mentions it, they're going to think, run away, run away. But yeah, they admitted that with Last Crusade, they wanted to go back to the roots. And so they brought back the Holy Grail, as they rejected it a couple of times for it being too ethereal. And there was still that idea of the haunted house, the castle thing, which obviously is now morphed into the Nazi castle in the middle of the movie. But one of the reasons Spielberg didn't want to focus on that was he felt it was too similar to Poltergeist, which he had produced and written, and some say Ghost directed. That's not a pun. But yes, Spielberg's input, whereas Lucas was like, it has to be about the Grail, Spielberg was like, we have to include Indiana Jones's dad in it. And his feeling was that the Grail didn't offer a huge amount of special effects. So the climax was more about a metaphor of the son seeking the father, and the father, and seeking reconciliation with the son. And it goes back to the roots of Indiana Jones. Spielberg said, who else is going to play the father of Indiana Jones if not James Bond himself? So I think Connery was top of the list of, we have to get this guy. And I've got a few others on coulda, woulda, shoulda, but in Spielberg's mind, it was like, well, it has to be Bond.
Well, for me, it's not just Bond. It's Connery. It is.
It's big. It's bigger. He's bigger than Bond. He's bloody Sean Connery.
But also, if you look at what this role is, what I like about this is the fact that we're established the character in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and in Temple of Doom's like, oh, he's doing another adventure. And then when we get it, I think it would be hard for it to be third time lucky that he's fallen into. I think what's done brilliantly, the way that Spielberg sets this up, or Lucas, or the two of them, is the fact, oh no, it's not you, it's your dad. And it's the fact, the Grail was my dad. You're talking to the wrong Jones is a brilliant line. And it like shows that they're, two cut from the same cloth, but that he's followed his father's footsteps. Like, oh, I can't help you. I mean, just like what I'm like for the Grail, what I'm like for the Ark, my dad was like that for the Grail. It's like, well, I think it's just brilliant storytelling.
And the interesting dynamic for most of the film, it's not he's trying to find the Grail, he's trying to find and save his dad. And it's only until the end, it's like, well, they've got the coordinates, they know where it is, we're going to have to stop them.
You didn't bring it.
I should have sent it to the Marx Brothers.
She talks in her sleep.
Apparently,
Connery. That's
a Sean Connery ad lib. Apparently, he just improvised it on set, and everyone was pissing themselves laughing. And Spielberg's like, "Well, that's staying in.
That's got to stay in."
According to Frank Marshall, who produced it, he said, "Yeah, everyone was signed on to do 3." And there was always that idea of what do we do with the closing of the trilogy. And it was, that's why it was important to bring in
the father.
Henry Jones Sr. Obviously quite famous.
I think it explains so much in terms of backstory. Like we talk about general exposition, about economic exposition. And this is a masterclass for me. Like filling in all the gaps you didn't. I think this came up on an Empire podcast about, was it the Lone Ranger or something? It's, this is how he got his hat. But in this, it's done with eloquence. It's like, this is how he gets the whip. This is how he gets the hat. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't think it's too heavy-handed. I think it kind of works. Unfortunately, I think other weaker films would go on and repeat this.
Yes, but again, as you say, it does it so economically, and again, it's a bit like a Bond cold open, and that's it. All the Indiana Jones have the brilliant the cold open. I mean, it's one of the highlights of Temple of Doom, that whole thing in the Club Obi-Wan. That's a brilliant opening sequence. But yeah, this is so well done, and obviously the brilliant, taken far too soon, River Phoenix. So apparently he was handpicked by Harrison Ford to play him because they had been in a film together previously, The Mosquito Coast. And so, yeah, Harrison Ford was like, I've performed with this guy. And apparently on The Mosquito Coast, he was constantly impersonating Ford and taking the piss out of him. And he's like, said to Spielberg, you've got to use this kid. He's brilliant. And obviously River Phoenix's star was on the rise anyway at that point. And it's genius casting. The mannerisms. And as you say, there's all the little bits that he gets, but it doesn't feel, I don't know, maybe it is nostalgia, but it doesn't feel too forced. And maybe it's the fact that, as you say, other films have tried to do it, like the Han Solo film and other stuff.
Yeah. To compare them, I feel like those films have done it. Like this entire set piece, this entire part of the story is about him getting his hat and his whip. Yeah. Whereas I feel like we've got, it's so economic at the beginning. It's like, we've got this little mini adventure. And I think this is them going back to what I remember you telling me about the original inspiration for the Indiana Jones story, the cartoons, whatever.
The serials. Yeah.
Yeah. This was the typical type of story, the cartoon, comic, whatever, that it was inspired upon. And the fact that it's done so quickly, and it's like, okay, so what else can happen? It's like, well, we've got him on a train. Oh, that's going to be cool. And what's on the train? Well, animals and snakes and lions and whips and in the gets
and magic.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And they do it all in like 15 minutes. It's like brilliant. And so, whereas I feel like, as you say, Han Solo and some other films, like we get 15 minutes of nothing that's connected. And then at the end, we get given of something that we've lived with for years. So,
but it's quite a nice trick at the start because the reveal, you think it's Indiana Jones. He's obviously digging for something, and the reveal, you don't see the guy's face who's wearing the hat. He's got the leather jacket, and then it quickly reveals, oh no, it's 1912 or whatever, and the kid is Indiana Jones. It's a nice sort of rug pull.
I feel like Spielberg's really shown his capabilities in period pieces. It's funny, like you think of, like, if you look back at his films, like, yes, he's done some great modern day stuff, but like when you look at the stuff like Saving Private Ryan and this is like he's jumping all over the place, and it's like he gets it spot on. And I don't know, there's something about, and I can't wait to do Temple of Doom, but there's something about Spielberg and Lucas. It's like I almost feel like they've done some of the most successful projects that have ever been made. Let's not shy away from that. But it might have been, I would have loved them to have made more films together. And is that me? I think I was maybe being a little bit greedy, considering what they have actually created together. But I would love to have seen more.
It's funny you talk about the period thing, because Spielberg, I think, had just made, I think this was the film he'd done previously was Empire of the Sun, which I watched fairly recently and is a great film. It's a very depressing film. But obviously, it's a great, World War II piece and, period piece. And I don't think
it's got a miniature Batman in it.
It has got a mini Batman. It has got a young Christian Bale in it. I don't think it was, like, whilst it was nominated for loads of awards, it didn't win anything. And I think Spielberg felt a little bit in a rut. And I think these films, to go back to what you were saying before, it's almost like those two just being kids again. It's like, okay, well, it's like playing with their toys. Okay, what do we want to do? It's like playing with our action figures. Okay, well, how can we make this fun? And it is channeling, the stuff that they grew up with when they were kids.
But do you not feel it always has an adult punch to it? It's almost like the stuff that they do together, where it's almost like it's a little bit, it's that ridge edge of PG-13, PG, whatever you want to call it. They're really on the edge of, this is acceptable.
Oh yeah,
I'm a little bit scared. It's like this. You can never say that it's too tame.
Yeah, he's killing lots of people. Let's not forget. He's not gunning down lots of people, but there is that iconic moment later in the film where he shoots 3 Nazis at once.
He also does hit 2 people with one punch at the start of this film on the boat, which I was like, got to perfect that.
Can I just say, it popped up in the trailer. I think it's iconic to this series, but the sound of the punches being thrown is so Indiana Jones, isn't it?
I feel like, we haven't done Doom for a while, Temple of Doom. I was like, that's from the first film. When he's punching that big bald Nazi on the plane, on the bomber. at the end.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's credit to it's the same guy who did all the sound effects, sound designer on Star Wars. It's Ben Burt, the guy came up with the sound of the TIE fighters, the lightsabers, everything. And yeah, it's the same with Indiana Jones. He's like a iconic sound designer, and that's why it's just so ingrained in the brain, like those sounds.
You feel it, like you're saying about those punches in Indiana Jones, and it's like the whip, and it's like it's also the sound of the Colt. What is it?
The pistol,
the MP19, one of the most reliable revolvers there is, and it is the sound of that being just like firing off a couple of rounds. But I mean, just to bring this all back to the whole Lucas Spielberg thing. Watching my son is heavily into Star Wars, and we're just doing that beautiful journey through Empire Strikes Back, and there's the bit with the snow monster. He's going to chop his arm off. It's like, oh shit, should I pause? And like, no, I watched it when I was 7. He can watch it.
Exactly.
And it's like that for Indiana Jones. That's what I'm trying to talk about. What I love about what Lucas and Spielberg seem to do, what they've done with these films, is they really push the envelope. Yeah, kid. Yeah, this is what happened in the war. This is what happened in Nazi. It's like people were getting shot and impaled and stabbed and whatever. And we're going to show you. We're not going to show you all the horrible gore Tarantino style, but we are going to show you what happened. And so I don't know. I feel like it's necessary.
But one thing I sort of noticed this time around, and again, it's nothing new, but watching that the second part of the cold open where it fast forwards to him on that Portuguese boat getting the shit beaten out of him is the amount, and it's the thing I love about these original trilogy and these films is the amount of practical effects. The fact there's gallons of water pouring in the whole.
I was trying to work out where's this been shot. It's probably been shot in Pinewood or something. But
I think it is.
Amazing.
It was Shepperton.
And it's just like all of this water and like it's like and then there's adult me going, it's an amazing studio feat. And today, unfortunately, probably green screen. That's cynical for us to say. Maybe they would still do elements of this with we've yet to see the Dial of Destiny, but I recently rewatched Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and that's still my main sort of takeaway. My thoughts haven't changed since it came out, is that one of the biggest offenses it does is just the amount of CG. And you can say, oh well, that's just the way films are made, but it just feels so video gamey and so like I tried watching it the other night. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just to say, just there's too many CGI sequences, whereas we talk about that Jurassic Park effect of that perfect balance between practical and T2 as well, practical and CGI enhancements, whereas there's just too much CGI in Crystal Skull.
I think it's about creativity. Like the best directors out there are like, and we have seen, I think you could like just slight tangent, talk about Cameron. There's elements
or Nolan,
Or Nolan. No, but what I can say about Cameron is there's times where he's proven that he's like, I don't want to do too much CGI. It detracts from the story. And there's been other elements of camera. It's like, oh, look at this shiny thing. Isn't it amazing? Let's do too much of it. So like, you can understand why directors get carried away. But I think I tried watching Crystal Skull, if we're going to do a Crystal Skull tangent on this. And I just felt like it was beyond the point of it didn't carry the story along, didn't add anything to it. And he's great. This is the thing. And this is why you could see them. I'm sure this is why we're not going to talk about Dial of Destiny now, but it's like you put Harrison Ford in a fedora. Could you look like a grisly archaeologist who can kick ass any day of the week? That guy can. At any age, it would appear.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I think my thoughts are still the same. Just to like sum up Crystal Skull, it's a great opening, and even with the nuking the fridge sequence, it's you're seeing him back. He slips back into character so seamlessly. He can still carry it off, and it's only really in the latter half that it really dials up the silliness of the aliens and the shonky CGI, and that's where it falls apart, sadly.
I can remember coming across this term more in computer game lore, which was about I think it was actually in terms of The Last of Us. It was like look, whatever it is, we would all just like to spend more time with these characters. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's the curse of Indiana Jones, is that we're all so much in love. It's like, how hard can it be? Find something hidden somewhere where other people are going for it. There's going to be peril and chase and special effects to make a movie out of it. It's almost, I'm surprised that I went to see Transformers the other day, and it was as good as any
seventh Transformers, I think.
As good as probably the last 5, not as good as the first, but better than maybe other ones. Who cares, But so Indy hasn't had that sort of treatment, but you could understand with the perfection of the setup why they might try and do it. So I think we've covered. I know we're getting close to doing coulda, woulda, shoulda and stuff. Is there anything you want to talk about the film itself before we jump into that, George?
I mean, I know Temple of Doom is technically a prequel, but this feels like more of a direct sequel to Raiders. It's that, let's take that formula of the continually evolving adventure and escapades. I mean, it is just non-stop, isn't it? In terms of, you've got a very action-packed opening. You have a little bit of, economic exposition about what is the Grail and what's the mission. But then you've got boat chase, you've got bike chase, you've got car chase, airplanes, zeppelins.
The chases are so good, and the
tanks, horses. It's got everything.
But even the catacombs, the motorbikes, the catacombs with the rats and the petrol. I love that. I think even that as a scene is like, I feel like it's like we talked about this with Marvel. It's like a victory lap. It's like, I like to think that Spielberg and Lucas sat down and they went through and they were like, okay, so that's what it feels like. It's almost like a greatest hits.
Well, just to get back to that CGI versus practical, do you want some rat facts?
Give me the rat facts. How many rats were not harmed? Rats can't be harmed.
So obviously you can't just use any rats. You have to use, well, hopefully if you're working with actors, disease-free rats. So Lucasfilm ordered 1,000 disease-free rats for the catacomb sequences from the same company that did the bugs and snakes in the previous movies. And within 5 months, this company breeded 5,000 real rats, especially for the sequence.
We're out of rats, sir.
But then, Charlie... There were 1,000 mechanical rats made for the scenes where the rats were set on fire. So with the like squirreling in the water.
Was it just me, or did you feel that those scenes of the rat in her hair were longer than needed? I felt like there was still maybe some divorce sort of like process going on. And then, the rats are in her hair. She can't get them out.
And she's screaming.
And she's really screaming. She's really
and Indy's abandoned her.
Okay, can we just cut longer?
Yeah. But there are some, and I think again, like it's the same formula in Raiders in terms of this time you've got globetrotting, obviously with Temple of Doom, outside of the opening sequence, it's all set in India. And you're in that one location, whereas you have that sense of urgency, that pace of them globe-trotting around. And you've got some fantastic sequences in Venice. And then, the whole the haunted castle bit, with the Nazi stronghold that feels very Where Eagles Dare. But
there's also, he keeps on turning up in Venice. Venice. Such the US tourist. I love it. It's like, but it's Venice.
I just want because there's a bit where they're in the catacombs and he goes, rats. I just want lots of cutscenes of him walking into different rooms and just seeing different things. Nuts. And then just being surrounded by nuts. But it's about 45 minutes before Mr. Connery turns up. Junior.
What an opening. I'm just going to take, basically, what's his entrance? I'm going to take out Indiana Jones, basically.
Yeah.
That's his entrance.
But I think the reason why this film is so memorable, and obviously there's their relationship, but the really unique thing about this film is Connery playing against type. It's the fact that he's so bookish, he's so nerdy, he's such a a scaredy cat, and he's the comic foil, and it's the fact that he gets most of the laughs, and it's just him reacting to Indiana. And obviously, there's so much going on that's explaining why Indiana is so reckless, is to rebel against his dad and what have you. But they have such insane chemistry, and they all talk about how much fun it was. Spielberg says it was the most fun out of all of them filming this. Harrison Ford's just saying, it was such a delight to work with Connery. Connery was so relaxed, and because it was almost against type, and he was a bit more laid, it was almost like, I think I've got a great quote here. He says, it was really great to work with an actor who doesn't give a shit. I don't mean about the craft, but about his ego. We just clicked.
For me, what I couldn't get over is like the way that Harrison Ford looks at Connery. It's like a son looking at his dad. It's like they encapsulate, and I don't feel like I feel like they were just on this thespian, I don't know, journey. They were just like, okay, so I'm your dad, and you're Indiana Jones, and they're probably both. He's probably saying, I loved Raiders, and it's like, so I get to be your dad now, okay.
I mean, despite them only being in reality 12 years difference.
You've always made a joke about this, but I'm sorry, but that's the magic of cinema, because
absolutely,
me, it's entirely believable from start to finish. And yes, let's not forget the towering size of Connery that in his heyday would have stood above Harrison Ford, would he not? He would have been looking down on him. And
or at least toe to toe, it's like.
But that's what makes it more believable, because you're like, even if you're like, well, he can't be his dad. It's like, well, actually, yes, he could, because when he was younger, he was like kind of looked like him. And this is the thing, because I was watching this through Amazon via Paramount and a Jawa. I don't know how I was watching it. I was watching it through some sort of Paramount TV trial thing. But the fact is that the Amazon picture is what I put on the group, what I sent you. Isn't he glorious?
Yeah,
it's a picture of Sean when I think he's somewhere between
in his prime,
Dr. No and From Russia with Love.
If not, like it's like a proper headshot from the
oh my
60s.
God, it's just like so. And she's your father, Indiana. But no, I think I could never get tired. There's the bit when they're tied on the chair. There's all of this, and it's like, so who's putting this film together? It's Spielberg. It's like, so it's the fact there's this. You've got Lucas, you've got Spielberg, you've got Williams, you've got Connor, and you've got Harrison Ford. I don't know if we're showing our age, but it's like, how many other greats can you get together in a room? It's like, it's amazing.
And I think it's definitely got the most comedy out of all the films, and it doesn't lapse too much into parody. I mean, there's some great bits. One of my favorite bits is the bit in the Venice library where the guy's stamping the books and he's like hammering on the floor. But you also have that great cutscene of him talking about Marcus Brody. He's like, he knows languages, he'll blend in, and then it just cuts to, does anyone speak any English?
But then, of course, we get the fact that Connery's took that all in. Like Henry Jones, it's like, but you said Marcus would be hidden. And then there's also that moment is that I think it's on the air. She was like, I'm here. You can talk to me now. And so I just think they capture everything so well. The fact that he's Henry Jones, he's Indiana Jones, he's doing what he's done. We know he is the character from the other films. It's like take your daughter to work day. It's like, imagine Indiana Jones, but his dad's there. That sounds insane. No, wait for it. His dad is Sean Connery. Oh my God. That's what I feel like this film is to me. It was like, it delivered and it delivered and delivered. So should we talk about, I know you want to talk about coulda, woulda, shoulda, but isn't there some supporting actors that we should talk about a little bit?
Obviously, you've got the returning characters. You have Salah, you've got like Jonathan.
Bad dates.
And his bad dates. You've Denham Elliott as Marcus Brody, which we'll get back to. But there's also quite a few Bond connections in this film. So you have obviously Walter Donovan, who plays
For Our Eyes Only.
Yeah, bad guy in For Your Eyes Only. You obviously have,
and also he's in Empire Strikes Back.
Yes, as well. And I think he initially auditioned for just the Nazi stooge,
just Nazi roles basically.
Well, that's it. It's sort of like, well, I've been a space Nazi.
I've got a good jaw. I've got blonde hair. I'm basically just up for Nazi roles right now.
Yeah, did you see my work as Space Nazi #1 in Empire? But yeah, he was just going for I think Vogel, the Nazi captain guy, the really evil guy.
Oh, he's brilliant though.
And he went for that, and then they said, "Oh no, we want you to come back and audition for Donovan, the lead." And he's like, "But I'm not American," and he managed to blag it. But yeah, he's great in it. It goes without saying, some of the amazing stunts by Vic Armstrong, legendary stuntman. I knew it was
the Big V. The Big V's back in the house.
Yeah, and I think he says one of the most dangerous stunts he's done is when he leaps off the horse onto the moving tank. The timing of everything to get that right. But yeah, some amazing stunts. Alison Doody as well as Elsa. So she was previously Jenny Flex in A View to a Kill. So very quick role. But the film she did before this, Charlie, she's an Irish actress, was none other than Taffin with Pierce Brosnan, which I think we're going to have to add to our revelations list.
Well, if you're going to be like that, I don't think I want to live here. Add soundtrack.
So she was 21 at the time, so 21 in Irish, playing a 29-year-old Austrian spy, but she's brilliant in it. Yeah. And I think sort of like she's beautiful, she's very, very confident, very, great in the role, and it's just one of those things of, it's a shame she didn't do more stuff.
I like the chemistry between her and maybe it's just Harrison Ford. Have you ever seen him not have chemistry with a woman? I don't know. He was like the 80s version of, he was before George Clooney. That was the type guy. He was just like, he's 47 when this film was made. Because I was looking at how he's throwing himself around. I don't know if you do the dad comparison. Like, how old is he? Am I younger than him, or am I older? It's like he's 47 in this film.
Wow, that's impressive. Considering he does, we've talked about the amazing Vic Armstrong, but he still does a lot of his own horse riding. And I was just watching some video of him, I think it was for Esquire, chatting about his career, and he talked about how he fell in love with the horse that he rode in this, and he wanted to buy it, and he wasn't able to, and stuff like that. He says, he was a great horse, he was unafraid to get close to a tank and stuff like that. So yeah,
should we talk about that set piece for a second? Because that's what I felt like I was getting my just desserts of my love of Raiders in this film, because it's done well. It's not too long, because it is longer in Raiders. And I think we've talked about this in the 1 or 2 episodes when we covered Raiders, but that is one of the best set pieces ever.
Yes, the truck chase.
Whatever you want to call it, the truck to tank to horse to truck again. It's one of the best set pieces ever. So in this, it's just a great homage. And I think, and it's more, well, what can we change about it? Let's make it shorter and let's have much more explodey boom boom.
Yeah, I mean, I think originally it was set to be like a two-day filming, and I think Spielberg just kept coming up with ideas of let's do that, and let's do that inside the tank, and it turned into 12 days of filming. But yeah, there's so much going on. There's Connery's in the tank battling away, with Denham Elliott. Indiana's trying to get to the tank, but being gunned out from all angles. Then he's fighting on top of the tank. They're inside the tank. And then whilst racing towards the cliff edge,
comparatively compared to Raiders, it's a very contained tank scene for an Indiana Jones film.
Oh no, absolutely. But it's a masterclass in action in terms of the stakes, the pacing. Again, just that practical thing. They built 2 different tanks. They had a really heavy one, and then a lighter one. So the bits where you're seeing Harrison Ford's face being held next to the tank tracks and Sean Connery on it, that's obviously the lighter, more sort of stunty type one. But yeah, it's just a phenomenal sequence. And if anything, obviously it slows, it's not an anticlimax, but the whole bit at the end with the trials is quite a sort of subdued ending, I suppose.
I feel like that's why we've had this final chase with the tanks. We can't just go to Petra walking through the gates and do the trials. We have to give the audience something else.
But I think I read somewhere that the motorbike chase was a reshoot. It was like they felt that there was a sort of almost like a dip in the second act. It was like, oh, we need to add something else in.
I could imagine there probably was, yeah.
And so that's why I suppose you don't really notice it when you watch it for the first time, but that's all filmed in California. That's not in Germany or Austria. And it's,
don't worry about that.
It's around the backwoods, I think, of George Lucas's ranch.
Don't worry about that. Okay, George. So I think we've gone through our highlights of the film. What else is there to be said?
So yeah, I mean, I think we need to talk about. I don't know if you talked about this on microphone or not, but yes, this was originally set to be the final installment. And... I did say,
yeah, this was apparently the last Indiana Jones film we would ever get.
Yeah, so it was in the reviews. You were sharing an Ebert review with me before we start recording, and even I've got here. There's a Daily Variety article from June 1989 where both Spielberg and Lucas announced this was the last in the series. So
that's it. We've done it.
Yeah, and I was even reading an Empire review that was dated back in 2000. I think it might have been for the original DVD release that said, "Oh, it's not as good as Raiders, but it's a fitting last entry for the Indiana Jones saga." And it's like, yeah, about that. So yeah, I mean, before coulda woulda, should we do coulda woulda, and then we can talk about thoughts and hopes on the franchise as a whole. And
yeah, so who was considered for the role of Marcus Brody if he didn't come back from his touring? I mean Indiana Jones.
Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think if they should.
So it's the only, and I've got a couple of coulda, woulda, shoulda. So if Connery had declined, they had Gregory Peck and John
Hannibal from 18.
No, that's George Peppard. George Peppard. No, Gregory Peck is famous
but
screen.
Isn't he older than George Peppard? Gregory Peck.
Yeah, because Gregory.
You'd be like too old compared to Connery.
Well, I think he might have just been age accurate. Whilst Connery was acting older than 17 years younger or whatever.
I think the Connery and Harrison Ford thing, for me, it's believable. It's sexy,
magic.
And it's magic.
It's
magic. It's sexy.
It's the fact that he's geeky, but then when it's revealed he slept with Elsa, it's just that Connery eyebrow, and you're like, okay, I believe him.
Yeah, I believe him.
I believe him. Apparently, Sir Laurence Olivier was lined up to play the Grail Knight, but had to bow out due to failing health. So that was going to be a little cameo at the end there.
That could have been nice.
So yeah, this is some trivia I shared with Charlie about Denham Elliott, who sadly I think died of AIDS in the early 90s, I think it was.
An amazing actor, a proper thespian, a national treasure.
Fantastic actor. And, obviously we talked about how brilliant he is in Trading Places as well. But it seemed like he was, to paraphrase Monty Python, a bit of a goer. So this was shared on Twitter recently. And I don't know where it's from, but it says here, when Denham Elliott first confessed to attending orgies, Susan instinctively declared the marriage over, and the couple agreed to a trial separation. But on the flight home, she decided to try again, and within a week, they had patched their relationship up. Back in Ibiza, his affairs continued, his taste running to the exotic, including Chinese waiters, Moroccan gigolos, Spanish garage attendants, Barbadian shop assistants, and even a hunchbacked Haitian dwarf.
Well, he's not fussy.
The man had an appetite that would make Freddie Mercury blush.
But he loves attention. He's got a lot of love to give. Let's just say that. But a man who's picked his films. I don't know what he did in his earlier career. I just remember the stuff he did in the 80s. Like, I feel like we see actors like that who come into their own and they're like, there's the Bill Nyes, there's like, what did they do when they were younger? Because like right now they're like shit hot. And like, that's what Denham Elliott was during the 80s. There's a great miniseries called, I think, If Tomorrow Comes, about a girl who gets, she's backpacking in Thailand and some guys plant drugs and he's got to get her out of prison or she's going to get shot. And it's a real hard, and he's like, that's where he's at. He's like here, he's there, he's everywhere. But I don't know what he did in his earlier career. I don't think I discovered.
Well, I should say,
I think like 60. You know?
Yeah, no, I think he was one of these people that was, theatre thesp and probably did a bit of TV. I think was he in Chariots of Fire? I'm probably, but yeah, he was a proper thesp, a brilliant, very talented British actor,
and he had a lot of love to give.
So
George, what else should we talk about?
I think I was really struggling to think issues I have with this film. What are this film's weaknesses? And it's really clutching at straws. You could say, it's a slave to the formula established by Raiders. Some of the effects, whilst there are some brilliant practical effects, there is some matte sort of CGI stuff that looks a little bit rough these days. But I think that's unfair. It's unfair. It looked fantastic at the time. It was cutting edge at the time, and I really struggled to have a bad. It's the same with Raiders. I find that film is pretty much flawless. I'm really motivated now to do Temple of Doom. Now that we decided to do this one first, I'm like, that is so standalone because this is going back to type. This is very much okay. Maybe everybody didn't get our artistic vision on Temple of Doom, but we did, and like, it's terrifying. It's uncomfortable. It's like the best comedy out there. It's like Alan Partridge. It's like you love it, but it's like it feels horrible watching it. And that's the thing. It's like, what does real danger, real peril involve? Well, horrible beasties. Anyway, and as you say, you've got the one of the key points in that film is the relationship between him and Short Round. I think we will definitely get round to it.
I Ke Huy Quan, I think he, after winning an Oscar, he's going to do something. I've got a special feeling about that guy.
Keep your eye on him.
I get a special feeling about that special guy. But
I think with yes, they should have really stopped with this one, with Last Crusade. Though I am, cautiously optimistic, but I will go and see Dial of Destiny. Well, people might not be familiar if you're not a sort of diehard film fan, but Spielberg has passed on the baton to James Mangold. James Mangold has done some great films. Logan, 3:10 to Yuma. He's also done, I think he did Night and Day. He did Ford versus Ferrari.
All quality films for my part.
Yeah, so he's done some great films. As we've said, it's just Harrison Ford, one of his best characters. He's born to play it. He has such charm. Who knows what's going to be? Obviously, there's going to be some digital face replacement stuff of him seeing Indy in his youth. He's back fighting the Nazis. It's been filmed at Bamborough Castle, near where Charlie and I grew up. So yeah, I think we're going to be rushing out to see it, but I think it's one of those things that they probably should have called it a day a long time ago.
Well, all I can say about Indiana Jones is that it's probably more accessible than Bond in some ways. I can just remember being back in Manchester in the day, sort of just after university. Even, you could say, I'm going to watch Bond film. It sounds like a bit of a guy's thing. But the thing about Indiana Jones is that guys, girls, everybody loves Indiana Jones. That's the thing, is like...
It's a proper adventure.
I think it transcends, whereas you could say that Star Wars and Bond, they're a bit boy type stuff. it's classic, and I think that's why they keep going back and wanting to drink from the well, and not necessarily Lucas and Spielberg, but like they just created something so pure. It's like so adventure, it's so cowboy, it's so period, and the fact we talked about this when we covered Raiders, the fact because it's period, it works.
Yeah,
because and you can do a great period film with modern day technology and special effects and screenwriting and blah 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 and money. You can do it well.
Yeah, but as we probably talked about for Raiders, I don't know if it was out by then, but the imitators that have been since, ironically both originally video games, but you have Tomb Raider, the Tomb Raider films, and you have Uncharted and the Uncharted films, and they're both leaning heavily on that globe-trotting action adventure formula borrowed from Indiana, and it just doesn't work. It doesn't work, as it feels shallow. And I thought I think I described to you the Uncharted film as dumb but fun. It was absolutely, it was so formulaic and CGI heavy, and I'd rather probably be playing the game. But I was entertained for whilst it was on. I'm not going to rush back and watch it, but I'd seen the stunts done better elsewhere, like Living Daylights and other stuff. So
I'm not in a hurry to see it, and as you say, I think I'm more likely to go back and play Uncharted.
Yeah. So it's an odd one because Ford makes the role so iconic. It's a bit like the sort of
it's his role.
Well, they tried obviously with Solo to recast it, and to be fair to Olin Ehrenreich, I think he does an admirable job, and it's not really his fault. That film's just a bit of a average mehness.
Would you prefer though? Would you prefer? I mean, because I think they made the fatal mistake is it's uncastable. You can't recast it. If we're making an Indiana Jones film in 2023 and they're using Harrison Ford, to me, that tells you, regardless of how good this actor is, Holden, whatever.
Ehrenreich, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of his other stuff, sorry. Just go with the CGI. They should have just superimposed. It's like, well, we can't change Harrison Ford from Indiana Jones. It's like, I feel like Indiana Jones was the gift that Lucas and Spielberg gave to Harrison Ford. Like, you did such a good job as Han Solo, and you were kind of, you were in their story. You were such a big player, but you kind of fitted our, what could we give you, type thing. That's what I feel like it was. And I feel like they designed the role around him more. And then to take that away from it and to give it to another actor, whereas I almost feel like they should have done the opposite. I almost feel like, I don't know if you feel this way, but like, not Kingdoms, but if we're getting an Indiana Jones, I would be more open to another actor playing Indiana Jones now than I would be the disaster, I'm sorry to say, that was the Han Solo film. It is a good film. He is a good actor. It is a good film. But it should have been inspired by it. They should have called it something else. Trying to pass it off as an origin story for another actor, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, no, it's a funny one because I think obviously
you've got to handle it like Bond. You got to do it like Bond, where you cut the cord like Bond does.
Yeah.
Or do you know what I mean? You either cut the cord or you do something clever. And they're like, no, it's Harrison. It's a younger Harrison Ford. No, it isn't. Yeah.
No, it's an interesting one because obviously the digital face replacement stuff does look really good from what I've seen, and it's almost like, oh well, maybe we could get a few more prequel adventures out of this, And Harrison Ford said, it's my acting. They've taken this footage from the other films, run it through AI.
My paycheck,
and it's his performance, but with an AI filter on top of it. But he has to be behind that performance. He's
mocap, hours of mocap.
Well, that's it. He's not getting any younger, though, is he? I think he's 80 now, and so even if you say, "Oh, we could do a few more," you've still got to have Harrison Ford doing those mannerisms because yes, you can try and replicate it, but in a computer, you still got it. It goes back to
he's 81. He's 81.
And even James Cameron will say it always goes back to the performance rather than, you can have all the technology and the great special effects, but it's grounded by human performances. I think, sorry, I rambled on quite a bit, but yeah, I'm going to go and see it. I'm sure we'll share our thoughts on the new one when we get round to both seeing it.
It's an exciting time. We've got so many good films to see. We've got obviously Flashpoint, we've got Indiana Jones, we've got Mission Impossible. So all of our listeners should be listening out, because we'll be covering what we can on the podcast when it relates to these films that are coming out. We may do Mission Impossible 2 again. Are we doing anything to connect with Mission?
Well, no, we're not actually. I mean, I think we'll probably do on our Patreon. We always do some
we'll
recent
do recent
rambles.
But I'm saying on the original, on the Retro Ramble monthlies, we're not doing anything connecting to Mission.
No, we I think we've got to wait a while before
Real
we
gigs.
Before but is this leading on to what do you want to do next? Well, we have
I don't think we should tell them. I think we should. It's summer. It's a time of excitement.
Well, I think we can add a coming soon, and I think I've referenced it in other podcasts, but we are doing the 40th anniversary of both Octopussy and Never Say Never Again. We're going to do the Battle for Bond later as a summer episode. So we've got more Sean and Roger coming up later on our regular Retro Ramble.
I'm not sure how. I can't believe we haven't given Never Say Never Again its own episode, because just George and I doing impressions of Max Largo could be an episode in itself, but we'll do what we can. Anything else we need to mention, George, before we sign off and get us on retroramble.blog for the blog, where you can access everything we've ever put out there. You can access it through the convenience of your own phone or PDA or pager, whatever you're using.
But no, thank you to all the listeners for all their support, their comments. Please like and subscribe, share. Thank you to all our patrons. We've got a lot of stuff on Patreon, plenty of stuff there if you enjoy what we do on the regular podcast, so check us out on patreon.com. But yes, thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.
Excellent. Well, for this episode, I've been Charlie McGhee.
I've been George McGhee.
And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.